Hey everybody, it's Rockula, and welcome to Rockula Retrospective. This is the review of Season 5, Episode 2 of The Walking Dead, and this episode is called Strangers. So, we have escaped Terminus, we are on the road, and as I guessed, things were going to narrow down a little bit, but they narrowed down more narrow than I thought they would. What we got now is our group, and they're off by themselves running around. And the first point we come to is that this is the episode that's going to be centered around everybody coming clean and everybody wiping the slate and coming full circle around to where we're starting over again. And but first, you got Sergeant Abraham Ford is still contemplating the moment that he wants to make his pitch. Now, at the beginning of this, I'm starting to wonder if he's thinking about breaking off from the group or what he's going to do. So we'll find out a little bit later, obviously. And there's also another moment coming up in the show where I want to point something out about him. But he points to Michonne killing a walker, and he's like, that's why we need to wait. And I'm not really sure what he means by that. You got Tara clearing the air with Rick, and later on in the church, she clears the air with Maggie. And when you see Maggie and Glenn hug and kiss, Tara gives that little look, and I'm just wondering, is she jealous? And is that going to come into play later on down the line? Tyrese. Tyrese is obviously very loyal to Rick because of, how he saved Judith's life. And, I guess that he can feel like he's got some kind of worth because even though he's such a friggin' pansy sometimes, he at least can take care of that baby because he'll do anything to kill anybody or anything that tries to harm that baby. So I think he gravitates towards the baby because he doesn't have to worry about whether or not he's, going to be able to do the job. He just does it. Tyrese tells Carol that he doesn't want to tell anybody about the girls. And she kind of echoes that sentiment later on throughout the episode as well. In fact, she quotes Tyrese and says that she needs to forget, just like Tyrese did. So, you got the Rick and Carol moment where they're trying to make up, and she refuses the watch. And this is another hint that she's got reservations about still being with the group, whether or not they're okie dokie or not. So this is something that keeps being repeated on through this episode, and I'll talk about it as it develops. We've got so Daryl is trying to get it out of Carol, and it's not working with her either, and they're in the dark. Daryl hears the inevitable twig snap and goes to investigate, and obviously somebody's watching him. And so next day, we got them traveling down the road. Bob and Sasha, he finally gets Sasha to let down her guard, and he gets a couple of smooches out of her, and you know what? Tyrese approves. And why wouldn't you? I mean, this guy has proven that he'll live or die for anybody in that family, and if he wants to make his sister happy, then he should do it. Everybody deserves to have somebody that makes them happy, even after the Walker apocalypse. So here comes Gabriel Stokes, and we see he's not very good at defending himself against walkers, and Rick gives it. The group saves him, and Rick gives him the standard questionnaire. about the number of people that he's killed and the number of walkers that he's killed, and he ain't done nothing. And I'd like to stop for a second and point out that this has now become the societal norm. Unless you're a predator and you're just going to kill somebody or deceive them no matter what, if you're like Rick's group and you're a forthright type of people and you're trying to size up somebody's character, all you got to do is ask them why they made it to where they made it to. Because just like back in the last episode, you had Terminus Guard that was, kind of poking at Tyrese, and he assumed that the way that Tyrese was acting, that he had lived behind walls since it started, which turns out to be that that wasn't the case, and he misjudged Tyrese's character, but Rick is not misjudging Reverend Gabriel Stokes. Something happened for him to survive like that. So what we come up on here is another archetype that is very close to Dr. Eugene Porter and yet very different from Dr. Eugene Porter. And what I mean by that is that Dr. Eugene Porter is clearly a con artist. There's no doubt about it. His eccentric personality, his emphasis on trying to distract you with a bunch of flowery, colorful language, and it's kind of meant to misdirect you, and he knows he's a BS artist. He knows it. And he knows that you know it. But at the same time, he could hold the future. He could not. But what happens with Gabriel is that he's the exact opposite. He appears to have zero confidence in anything other than the Lord's ability to save his life. He just doesn't understand that his general demeanor makes people suspicious. And here's another thing that makes you suspicious about this guy. If you notice, he's got real close cropped hair. His beard is nice and clean. His clothes are clean. He doesn't look like he stinks like everybody else does. How did this guy stay like this for so long without doing something? And that's what really is starting to make Rick understand that this guy isn't just some BS con artist trying to survive with his wits and his personality. This is a guy who's got some huge demons making laps around in his skull. So we have the church, and Abraham Ford is already pushing for them to make a quick pit stop and then head towards DC. But everybody else wants to gather some supplies, rest for a second. And although Abraham Ford does have a point about, when you start resting, that's when they catch up with you. And obviously, if you've watched this episode, then you know. But at the same time, it's a valid point. And they create a point of tension here where each member of Rick's group kind of tells Sergeant Abraham Ford to his face, we're not going with your plan, we're going with Rick. And I'm wondering if they're just trying to kind of throw us off the trail, or if it's actually going to become a sticking point later on. Next we have Carl out back talking to Rick about the scratches on the windows and the scrawling message on the side of the building that says you'll burn for this. And I just like to point out that I really like the fact that even though you've been betrayed by Reverend Gabriel Stokes, you still take the time to use the proper punctuation and put the apostrophe where it belongs. So kudos to you, whoever knew how to use punctuation in the Walker Apocalypse. We get to the point where they find out that there's a food bank in town and that they're going to go to the food bank, and on the way out, Rick tries to convince Carl that he needs to harden himself and get ready for anything. And Carl rebuts with, you need to remember that we're strong enough to help other people, and without really saying, the normal response from a family kind of thing would be, God put us here to help the weak. But I don't know if anybody believes in God right now, but I know that they still believe in morality, and that is Carl trying to keep his morality and keep his father's morality in check as well. Now we got Bob and Rick and friends headed to the food shelf. Bob is appealing to Rick's sense of morality. Everybody's appealing to Rick's morality today. And Bob is saying that if this does work out, then you're going to need your humanity if it does. Which is a fair point. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in the timeline, and you also have Abraham Ford, who proposes a toast to the survivors. But, he's really appealing to everybody's sense of, do you want to be just a survivor, or do you want to live? Do you want to live for a certain future? And both of them make an impact on Rick's decision, which is to go. And I just wonder if, and I'd like for you to tell me if you thought so too, I'm just wondering if the baby that plays Judith, if she made a noise and Rick just kind of improv'd on top of it, if he was going to go, yeah, I want to go, but then he improv'd and put Judith in there into the decision as well. Carol has been hinting that she wants to leave the group ever since the beginning of episode 1 of this season. And it's cumulative here. You can see little places here and there where she's looking at doors. When she finds the car, she looks really disappointed that it's not working. And she gets a little kind of, not defensive, but when somebody's trying to hide their intentions. When she finds that battery charger, she is you could tell she's trying to hide from Daryl that she's going to go, but Daryl can see it. Now we get to the food bank, and here's where we come up on the common sense moment of the episode. And it is the fact that, they see that there's these walkers down in the basement that have fallen through the floor, and there's a big accumulation of water, and they've basically turned into slimy walkers. And my first instinct is not like their first instinct. They think, let's go down there and kill them hand to hand, but why? They've got things that they're stabbing the walkers in the face. Why don't you just grab a pole and fix it to them and just start stabbing walkers in the head from up above them? There you have the tactical advantage. And also any other walkers that are lurking around in the corners, they're going to come out to the commotion. So you could clear out a vast majority of the walkers just by poking them in the head from above. But, I guess that's not going to make for good television. So what do? They get down into it, and they pretty much find out what Gabriel is made of, and we find out that he really truly is a coward, or he is... I think we are starting to find out that he is really truly a coward, but he's going to be a very dangerous coward, and we're getting the sense that he'll sell anybody out and he'll screw anybody over to survive. You're certainly seeing things right now. Okay, now we are back at the church again, and it's evening, and this is when Sergeant Abraham Ford makes his pitch. Rick accepts it, and, here we go. Carol looking towards the door, and we got Bob, who is still making moves on Sasha, which is cool, and we got Tara making up with Maggie, and things look like they're going to end up being a fairly happy ending episode. You got Carol taking off into the night, and you got Daryl following her and finding out that she still wants to split. And when he catches up with her, she can't tell if she wants to go or not, and she's still torn. But then we've got the car that zooms by, and Daryl says that's the car that kidnaps Beth, and I'm going to call BS on that one because super observational Rockula powers, when I do actually have them, I have found the picture of the car right here that kidnapped Beth, and this is a picture of the car that sped by them. And here we go with a side-by-side, and if you look, they are two different cars. That's right. So I got to pat myself on the back for my observational Rockula powers on that one. So let's see what happens with that in the next episode, the midweek episode. And as we come into the home stretch, we find that Bob is outside looking in on the group, and he starts crying. So here's where I'm starting to wonder, and this is what I would call a wild prediction that may not come true, but what if Bob got bit in the cellar with that walker and he's just hiding it from everybody till he starts to show symptoms? That would justify him being out in the dark by himself so that he can cry. And obviously we see that Gareth and company have captured Bob and they're eating him. So let's get back to this. If Bob got bit and Gareth and company are eating him, what's going to happen to Gareth and company? Here's my other thing. Bob may die, but he may not, because they may keep him alive so that they can keep extracting pieces off of him. And when you look in the previews of the next episode, you'll see that he's still in the episode, so he obviously hasn't died. So this is going to leave open a concept of the same thing that happened with Herschel. Think about it. Herschel lost his leg, but they kept with him because he still had medical knowledge. And Bob may survive this. Whether he got bit or not, I know that's a kind of a weird, wild moment there, but Bob may survive this. And if he does, he's still got his medical knowledge as well. So you can't just say that Bob's going to die. All right, so that ends up the episode. And what I'm going to do is I'd really like for you guys to make your comments about this episode and talk about things that I didn't talk about, because I didn't cover some things on purpose so that you guys could start talking about it. And I'm going to come back later in the week with the midweek re-review and the review of the reviewers. And we'll take everything that we've learned from each other over the week and we'll put it all together. And I will bring up new points, address points that I didn't understand before. And so, once again, like, subscribe, please comment, please share this with everybody, and I hope to hear from you before I start my midweek episode. I'm Rockula. This is Rockula Retrospective.